Ia o nei fo i tai au. O te tautala i le. Ava tele ba le wha alo alo. Tautala ba le wha i tete. Wā ua li tia sa. Lo ta se wai tupu bai la tunu a pe se. To uli. Ai ase badui au. Tu tuila ma badu. Le a fio bai lao. Ta maa le tunu. Tupu bai. Pa maa lor so i fo mbaua. Pa maa lor lange mama. O suruia il fal mbalama. Ma puti ngai le ata i le alofa bai la leo le atua lo to so i fua. I wina fua loa. So i fua. O pele ba losi bai le atua i fao ngai ila. Mo ia. Ya le atu du. Aftai ai le tai au fou. Le a fio matala mai a au. Ta maa o le atu du. Me le la fio per stede. Fio le sui per stede. Ma malu e fio ga sentoa le tai au fou. Ta maa ua. Fai mo lato tofi. Mo te maulunga le fono fai tu la fono ma lo Amerika Samoa. Whaftai a e pia i le tua o na. Whaonga hine o ta maa. O le aturu. Me le au na. Se o tato atu pupu e rupo le atua. E whawhitai alo na alofa lea. Ua mawhai ai o na. Maua se aso fou a le ola. So i fua le lei. Ia toa fionga. O la usa unia se te talo. E amata ele tato i loilonga. Tato ifo ma talo le atua. Le atua e. E ofo lava i bātou. E mātou mawhau whau. I lau alofa i tabā ia. Awa e stasi mwhai ona. Wha umiro nola. I se kone po se minute se aso. A pe tae e wha fuolo ina lo lato soifua. O tulu soifua. Au tu e wha popo fo ele nei aso. I aso soifua. E ngā te leo le mālosi. O le mawhau o le poto ma le loto batala. Lo whao ngā ina i tonu a inga o nu. O le mālo. Ia meisi e lau whi au pala ungaluenga pa ia. Aftai e le tua nei aso, pa nei tai au fou. A wā lupe sa wā se se le uto e whātasi le walofa bla wanga lei. In maota senate. Aftai le tua, lau tau singa. Iau au auna nei. Aftai iau mea alofa. Lo etuile la tuta e tuatasi. Aftai le ola. Soi fua na ofo inatu. Yo mai lava nei tula. Aftai o manuia le batu atunu. Rie foile. Kovana pe su kovana pa ta pulega. Banga fa misidonga pe si foile. O tau sui. Mai lau tele. Lo atunu. Aftai. Yo lava I whanau. manuia whawhitai le tua no waka lei. Tai o mea lofo tino e tau sia I mātou. Ia mesia o mea lofo siri whaleanganga. Sisili whawhitai o le Yesu. Lo lava alu peri tō tasi na wina mai. Ia mātou ola ia te ia. E mātou talo le tua. Afuta baia. Au alo atu au aula nei ta bā. Ni me ta upu ta ua e ale. Ni me nuia o tangata. Nei as, nei tai au. Fua ili loto matala mal maa fau le lei. I ma whaina mata fitu whai. I au ngā. O tangata le atua lo mātou te bā. Ai mo waso vi inga ono la tō soi fua o fwinatu. Whamangalo lo mātou se. Le atua lo mātou te bā. Ono al suafa o Yesu mātou wole wala o tuai. Amen. Malo whaftai. Ia o te whala watu le awa mal whala o tele. Sunga mo tsama le. Pesi fwai leu. Afio al whatonu Sandra. Wale ofisa. King. Se tala au le tūlea. Papia fwai le. Il vaanga le Hope Dialysis. Whaftai leu whatasipai le. Sui o le Hope Dialysis. Bolbole tala au le tūlea. Dr. James. Ia vea aui masui o tabā i o le atunu. Fioga se doa. Tu altu le liba le whaatalofa le tai au fou. Whaafitai o tātou whenua il manuia mai le atua peo na watu tātou taulanga le tai au. Ma lor soifua. Whaafitai a tautou ta itai o vaenga. Iso vaenga le malo e mesia le vaenga le. A whalmai ma soifua maloloina. Whapea fwoi le Hope Dialysis. Whaftai tere lava. On behalf of the Senate, Senators, I'd like to welcome you to this hearing. For those who do not understand Samoan, we are so happy to have you this morning. We know you're very busy, but with short notice that we sent you, you still able to make yourself available and come this morning to be with us for a very important hearing. Watuele ava doa is tau saudoaga. Ia ona watuele o tātou agenda le whasolonga tātou tau saudoanga aiale tātou pe masuion tātou pe aiga mal mafutanga ni tai au.
Just. Mori atu whaftai tele tu sai foi o le matou awanoa. Ai mawalunga ia le vi inga o le atua le nei tai au. Le ala whae mai foi o nana sunga le whawhiangainga e meise ta mai o le atunu. Le mori ait whaftai le atua ono le nei tai au fau whaopopo yaso tele o tātou soifua a wātau tuina o tangata whawhitai. A mawalunga man mapu apu o nei tai au te whātulo watu. Tulou ngā lava. A whio mai o ta mao le atunu e mes foi lau. A whionga tai e nei tai au. O leo o mai foi o le nei tu. Le sunga il whaatonu ia Sandra King o le Medicaid. O le susunga ia Dr. Kayapa, o le Acting CEO o le LBJ, i lo utu tamtau. O le susunga ia Dr. Sunia, lo utu tawangavale, o ia o le Acting CMO ma tato Falmai. O le susunga ia Dr. Jean, lo utu tamtau, o ia o le COO o le LBJ. O lo utu wangavale, o le susunga i tuafina ia Saa, ai meisa le tuafina ia Manhart, i lo utu tawangavale, o la ua ia o mai le Hope Dialysis, a wa fo i le vala au le nei tai au, a moli atu le whaaftai e tu sai fo i mal vala au lia, mo fo i nei avanoa tato wheloa ia nei tai au, a wa fo i tau tua le atu no, mal whaalo alo.
Whaaftai lo whioga le whaatonu, a suga polu sa, whaaftai polu sauranga. Te la kona se e watu tasi lava si o nei mea na whailoa mai e whalmai. Ia sua dafi pa tala tua dafi tulanga lo o ta otua i le nisi o mataupu le la tatu stalo i leo. O mataupu umana sila fia foi. Ia o le tuatu la le tabai le fisiri. Whatu di fisiri po albe o ani tulanga i fia malama mai. Ona o mea iwa whailoa mai a matou. O le ato a whioga se doa ia nei kopi nantu whane tai au ia whai anda whaong e fisiri ei oi disi o mbena lo iai matou malama. We know that the Medicaid program under the Sandra King has been discontinued, has been closed out. So stebi ona matou lagona si fia la whioga i se toa watapuli o tau fia proklama le na fatau tai la fioga i fatolu ia Sandra King. Sau stebi on vatu le sili pa pena foi ona sau no mai i ai o se tala fanonoa e o se tala fia o se tala e le ai malai ai tatu bafta ia stebi tatu tu fai patu balbalama si fia foi e a foi e tabadei o te pundi de Hope Dialysis o si fia foi fasu tasi bai sa tonga fitia ina leua wa mai I mai e fasu tasi ya le fa popole le asilawi va valu le dai I fal bai ya bo ele ole ya faida do se la to supereva ya le ole o nai facility la volea. They still doubt whether the hospital can really accommodate all those patients. 41 patients in addition to the 198. So we want to know that from you. We hope and we're still optimistic there is no problem with that. So listen there, yeah. Ole thanks for your Matu lo foi le wa mai thanks for your I fa mai fa fa ai. Sebelele ya a faila o manuia ma ie wo fa popo bai I te puli o fa popo bai wale le tulanga upa ia o me na fia lo fia si da fia ta ma ia e la va fo ini la tu si bai ia ma la ma ti ai sau stebi ona fa fule si suga fa to dia motsa tu sai o atola unga o I manu ai tulanga o I manua pe ona fiatu e fionga se to dea ma le pule ia mamao ai o le la mata atu fesile tama ia le fionga su presidente
ia lo fesili fa mole o tama ita ien fa lo mai vanga le ina running le Hope Dialysis saole
Le ala vala ua fionga.
So the puni na le Hope Dialysis. Am I correct? Sa mo ping palangi te mai te ua fa sa mo te le mal mai.
E fa sa mo umala ua la ua fionga.
Oh, sa mo ya. O te puni na tatu dialysis. O le sidi la wa fa te puni le dialysis O le ala me ua amia ina i tamaita ia la wata puni ni dialysis. Po le ua whainga renga il falmai. Whaola le Mike lea o lua le sa running le dialysis. Sa o le hope dialysis. O ua whainga renga nei la o lua il falmai pele.
Lefta amat.
Whaola le Mike lea.
Ina ia whapolpolea whaol fesirian. Ia.
That's all.
Anga bola. Ola fasili la afa pe wata puni le hope dialysis. O whainga renga ua falmai pele.
Le vai temi le ai.
Ele whainga renga o lai wale o malolo o lua. O le mamala pola mea laina mai o lua tonu le longa le wale wata puni le hope dialysis. Ali la pasunga te komite.
Ia, wale fesiri le sunga sui presidente na fesiri le sunga presidente, na fiunga presidente na sua nafi. Tal sua nafi. Ele o manino tonu al mafuanga o tapuni ai le hope dialysis. Po le a tonu al mafuanga o ai a fai o tupe o ia le su bele le fatolu ia Central South State Bioda Saudolia. Ele o mambalava le I matou po ai tonu e ngafa patupe le le mafu le tapuni le hope dialysis. Po o tou po ai ia mena le na mai o lua. Se fai mai se lua saudoanga I manino le ai ma o mai le foi ia le fatolu ia Central. Ia saud
Mo pe ona o whatulo atu. I le awa tele ma le ni ngau. E te tau wai. I tupu ma mali. A fionga si toa wha pele e tai fono. E pa ia lasi. O li komiti whai tu la fono. O poto le nei tai au. Whawhetai tele mo le awa noa. Ta alofa. O au. O sa lua pata o rata talili le toi. O au o le taitai po le facility administrator le hope dialysis. O Manhart. O ia o le compliance officer o le hope dialysis. E whatulo watu. Ono o le uti o le teimi. O le tāua na wā, o le ne awa noa, o le au whaunga ina lenga ngana whapetania. This morning we have been invited to come and to give a little bit of an explanation why we're here. Hope Dialysis is a private dialysis, just like any other dialysis in the mainland. We are basically, how we receive our funding is through private insurance. Medicare Part A and Part B, Medicare Advantage, private insurance. That's how we get our 80%. Off island, you have to have two insurances. Medicare, private insurance, as a secondary, Medicaid. Here in American Samoa, unfortunately, we don't have a Medicaid per se insurance. For this reason is why we are coming to the Fono, to the Senate, to give us an opportunity to be a Medicaid provider, to help us with the 20%. If we're asking the patient to come and pay the 20%, they will not be able to pay it. The Medicare Part A and Part B pays the 80%. The 20%, if you have insurance, it's about $800 to $1,000 a month. Without insurance, it's about $4,000. Our patients cannot pay that. They cannot pay that. That is the reason why we have come to ask the Senate and allow maybe Sandra to help us out with the 20%. This is the reason why we're here.
Now, in the beginning of the Hope Dialysis, how did you fund it? Was it a grant or somebody provide the money to start it off?
That's a great question. So when we first started out, we had about 8 to 10 patients. They all had insurance. And so it was doable at that time. We do have investors. We have 2 investors that have helped us along the way throughout the years, the 5 years. But when pandemic hit, that's when all the repatriation patients came. And some of them, they had insurance, and some of them didn't. Or they did have insurance, but they lapsed. So during those time that we had the dialysis patients, these patients lapsed their insurance where we were not able to receive the 80%. So not receiving the 80% and the 20%, we were now out of $4,000. But we were still taking these patients in.
Just because your investment left, so now you come to the government seeking help from the government. Is that what it is?
That's exactly what it is. We understand that these patients are also part of the American Samoa.
Because when I was on the golf course a month ago, a week ago, somebody approached me on the golf course to ask me they need help for the Hope Blood. But I told them, nothing I can do about it. Because your operation was not under the government. It was more like a private operation. And when you fail, or whoever started off, then you run back to the government and the government wasn't prepared. The operation of the government had the budget. And once the phone approved the budget and the governor signed it, that's the Bible to operate this government. Now for an entity like you, a private sector, to try to come in and ask the government for help, we don't know what we're going to do, give it to you, because the budget is already approved. And this is my concern. It looks like the only time I'm aware of it, when the COVID, the Medicaid helped you out. That was only one-time deal. But now you operate in the beginning like a private sector. And the part of that, the hospital had that function, but I'm not sure why you went over and started another one. Did you decide that you're going to make money because the government does not have enough machine to take care of the patient? That's what I don't understand. What was the purpose that you established that? You just to help the hospital? Did you make a study? You find out that hospital that cannot accommodate all the patient, diabetic patient, and that's why you end up doing that as a private sector. What was the real reason behind Hope Blood start?
Well, dialysis is a great problem here on our island. We have a sick population, and the majority of these patients are becoming, and they're being on dialysis. We came in as a private to help our community.
Yeah.
And we had all the intentions. We met several times with the director of Medicaid to allow us to become a provider for Medicaid. And that was from 2019 of October. Till today, there's no funding for dialysis. We're not part of the state plan.
I understand what you're trying to say, and I appreciate that. But still, the point is, when you start off in the beginning, I mean, I know what's the problem because it was on the newspaper when your stakeholder decided to move off or whatever the case is, and there was a case between the stakeholder and somebody who was providing the funding for the project. But this is my concern. Now, because you start off as a private entity, and then these things happen, then you don't have any money to run the place, then you come back to the government. So this is my confusion lays over here because you did not consider the government in the begin with. You only, I'm sure you only make an analysis that there's a lot of diabetic patients on island. And you can say, oh, we better start it. We can get some of that, which is a good idea. But you did not see in the future what the outcome will be. And now your stakeholder move away from it. So you come to the government, and it's the problem we're facing now. We can even provide the money for Medicare. Now we're trying to fit the Medicare because that the people need it. And you all jump into the government and ask for money because you don't have any money to function. And now the hospital is kind enough to bring the patient over. And I was told that they need another $1.5 million. And that is another problem now. We don't have pocket, I mean, we don't have a bank over here to provide money to every department who asks for it. But the thing about it is I don't know how you start in the beginning and now you come back to the, I hope you're not complaining the government because you're not giving you any money. I hope you know what we're coming from.
We're not complaining
Okay.
about the money. We're just asking for assistance. I mean, when the repat started, LBJ didn't want to take on the patients. I mean, we had the meeting with DOH and Medicaid and LBJ during the time of the repat, COVID. They did not want to take the patients, the dialysis patients. Who took them? We did.
In what way
We
you are
took-
asking the government? How are you asking the government? In what way? Agreement or an official request? How? Where's the request?
The request was, well, first of all, we requested 500,000
How?
for
How
the
did you?
local fund, local match.
Where's the request? Where's the
Well,
copy?
the request was given to, we did do a request letter, it was given to the governor. The governor did sign it. We have a copy, it's in the blue folder that somebody's
It is.
supposed to, we have that
Outlook,
request.
O te atu leo noe lo sunga te fono. Te es foi ni tai au lo sunga patonu ia wape foi le vaenga o mai ma vaenga le hope ni tai au. E whaftai atu o leo peo se uri longa le mo le woi uma to te leo o vaenga i e taun koneti whatasi. A lo ua ai atu mau tau monitoring kunga tu langa o tatam ta upu. O te manatu e taun tu atu lewa no ia e Sandra. Ie whaamamalama le mai le territorial state plan. Pe whawhenga inko connect uma le whalmai o le DOH ma le Hope House. O na malamalama le o sintoa i le mea le tatu te ranga i ei. Po whia tonua le mea le whale tonu. Ia on tatu tara no le le ta upu.
Right.
Nana leo te wabai atu ia e pungtala i titi atu langa o le tatu whamalama. Ai a whamalama mai oe po le ale tu langa o lo tu oe le tatu territorial state plan. En counter lole o mea ie lupe o afen koneti mai tonu fan mai ma le DOH. Ia pa pe mai hopa ia fa more ma to sit from no central.
Lisa no centro, pues tu das malapule, lesa malapule. Lo sina fi fai Lisa no centro. Lisa no centro.
Le mele usa ele fe un
Ja.
support ma
Dai, ja so no ia lo.
le
fa
fa
tot.
mora kemi. Ele foi le fa pula le mele se senga o le proclama le provide le Medicaid. Ma la le da le LBJ.
Ja. Ja so no ia lo, ia fa tot centro.
Whaftai lava. Te whaatalo whaatu le mamalu o le maota. Whaftai lava mo le nei avanua. O te masalo e talawhia nei ono whai atu se whamatalanga i tūlanga leo le HDAC. And if I may, I want to, it's really good to provide context in how the HDC came to be and Medicaid's role in it. And I can share that with you firsthand because I have been involved with HDC since the very beginning when they first approached me back in 2018, sometime or 2017, about wanting to set up a private dialysis clinic here in American Samoa. And I just also want to note, I really appreciate Ms. Manha and Ms. Sa being here. They both worked for me at the Medicaid office, and have knowledge of the Medicaid state plan. And I just feel bad that they have to be here to defend and explain the HDC when they were not part of it from the beginning. So when HDC opened its doors in 2019, initially when they first approached me, I told them I cannot enroll them as a private Medicaid provider providing dialysis because those services are already being provided at LBJ. But more importantly, the barrier to access and to supporting them is the lack of local match. At the time, the only local match we had was $2 million. And that was, actually we didn't have it in 2019. The former Governor Lolo gave us $2 million to start the off-island medical program in FY 2020. But if you recall, HDC was opened in 2019. The words of advice that I had given to the former owner, Mr. Chris Fisher, is that if they wanted to set up a private dialysis clinic, they did it at their own risk. And they needed to make sure that they had enough investor money and deep pockets, because as far as I could see back then, it's not sustainable. They didn't have the data of how many people at the time, all the dialysis patients were being served at LBJ. And remember, at LBJ, we do not have to give them local match.
Yeah.
LBJ has their own local match through in-kind services. Anything outside of LBJ requires a local match. So they opened their doors in 2019 without being a Medicaid provider. They did it at their own risk. Now, in FY 2021, when Governor Lemanu initiated repatriation efforts, the issue was we could not bring dialysis patients home because they had to be quarantined. So we met, and the Department of Health Director asked me for help to see if there's any way that we could cover dialysis services to try and bring dialysis patients home during repatriation. It was all agreed by all of us that they could not be treated at LBJ because of the risk of exposure. That is the reason why LBJ could not take the repatriation dialysis patients. They needed to be separated from the rest of the population.
Yeah.
And the risk of taking them to the hospital was too high. So the only solution was we needed to work with HDC. So Director Nua asked me if there was some way that Medicaid could help. And yes, we could. We submitted a disaster response state planning amendment under the Public Health Emergency Act that waived all the licensing and requirements for facilities so that we could immediately bring them on board to address the disaster response. The only problem was it was temporary. Hope Dialysis could only be, we could only bring them on as an emergency Medicaid provider during the public health emergency time period.
Yeah.
And at that time, the governor agreed. We brought them on immediately, and we paid them $450 a patient to do dialysis every time there was a session, a patient had session. So that's, each session is $450. In Hawaii, we paid $750 under the Medicare fee schedule allowability. But it was always articulated clearly to HDC that their Medicaid provider status would only be temporary during the public health emergency. And we are very open to making them a permanent Medicaid provider. However, there has to be a local match appropriated for them specifically, or we have to get an increase in the local match to address all these private potential Medicaid providers that want to be enrolled as a Medicaid provider. We informed them of the termination of their disenrollment, what we call disenrollment. We disenrolled them at the end of the public health emergency time period, and that was sometime last year, at the end of the year. I think it was October or November when the PHE ended. We met with them, and I said, we do want to, I think it's a good policy. However, we have to remember that they're a private clinic. We have to pay the local match for it from local tax dollars. So I told them it's too late for us to bring you on as a permanent Medicaid provider this year in FY 2024, like you stated, Chairman, the budget was already passed and we were in our budget year already. But I did indicate that we are willing to bring them on board as a permanent Medicaid director in FY 2025, which begins in October 2024. Governor Lemanu has already instructed me to move forward with amending the state plan to allow this to happen for any private dialysis, so long as we have the local match increase for the year, and then it would be up to me to look at the financial data and to set aside an amount to ensure that we provide them with the local match. So their closure that has come about is, quite frankly, not Medicaid's fault. We have the data. The Medicaid only really pays 20% only for eligible patients. During the PHE, we covered everybody. So there were other patients that were traveling even afterwards that came here, and so HDC was very helpful in providing coverage during their visits. Based on the data we have, you know, we used about 55% of the money we paid to Hope Dialysis came out of the local funds, because we cannot use federal dollars to pay for non-US nationals. So residents from Samoa and elsewhere, we have to use 100% local.
So,
Yep.
so the only way that the Hope Dialysis will get the allocation that they're looking for is for us to amend the territorial statement. That's the only way that we can help them.
Yes.
Right, okay, because
Yes.
you're seeking, the only reason why they were operating during that time is because of the
Public health
Emergency.
emergency
Okay.
disaster response.
Okay, I'm not finished. I'm going to go through what I have the chance. Okay, how is Medicaid connected to the DOH and the hospital? Do they do it by the in-kind, or how does that work?
DOH and LBJ are Medicaid providers, but each of them have a different, what we call, payment methodology.
Okay.
How do we pay them is different. It's the same thing with HDC.
Okay. Do they take up the allocation that we have based on under your allocation from the Medicaid on the side that you use for off-island? You take up the total, I mean, part of the total amount that we allocated?
No.
Okay.
LBJ,
That's good. Okay.
when we pay LBJ only gets one check, and that's a federal check.
Okay.
And their local match is provided through the services that they provide. That's, in a way,
Okay.
it's their in-kind
In-kind.
contribution.
Okay.
And it's only allowed that way because they are a government-owned facility. They use what we call a certified public expenditure,
Okay.
and only a government-owned facility can use that. So they don't have to pay the local match. We don't cut them a local check.
Okay.
When it comes to the Department of Health does require a local match. However, their local match is provided through their local budget. So the local budget that you provide to Department of Health, that's what we use for their local match. As long as it comes from government funding, that's a requirement. We cannot get local match from private people, from anything outside. It has to be funded by the government, the local match. So DOH is good. They have, what's your local match? 2 million? That's what we use for their local match. So DOH does not tap into the local match that is appropriated by the FONO to our office, unless they run out of their local match, and I don't think that's ever happened before.
But they don't tap into the allocation that we get
No,
from other.
they do
okay.
not. They use their local match. The local match that they submit in their budget for DOH is what we use to draw against for the federal share.
Okay. One more question. Do we owe anything last year since we cut this thing off and you try to pay up those bills? How much do we owe on that $4 million that was spent?
We're doing very good, thankfully, Treasury. I know they're struggling to get local revenues. I think the big bill that is still outstanding is the off-island medical referral bill, and the last report I got last week is there's about a $500,000 outstanding voucher, but the bills continue to come in because you know, all the invoices for patients, they don't all come in once the patient is discharge.
Well, we need to know that because the budget is coming up. We don't want to wait and $6 million going to be allocated for the next fiscal year, but you still owe maybe $4 million. So you're only going to use $2 million. Only $2 million is going to be available for next fiscal year. We need to know that.
Thank you, Senator. We do have a plan for sustainability for next fiscal year 2025.
Okay, please make that happen now because it's very, very important. We don't want to get into this kind of just go down the road. Okay, thank you.
Yes, Senator, thank you.
Fatolu Central, Marosa, Fabol lava sa. The Sweden by the Hope Dialysis. Balab Silfiela, Sugal Belen Saudo idea, Central. Bear to Langa Navan Tatal Noi, Boboa. Before the Galese, Ainga. Na matai leva October balo. The fire out of an table COVID there were COVID. Leila se tu lagavele fa marsiele le balo po centro evatu se tupe. Langale ini di malienga mani men of a trip fa fen fail request in the fight. Base official request da la tu ai alu ai. Ele fa beral fa ngoni di tu lago garbe me fa pede te fa tu to fo ya o le tirai ta ai le o ba I le to ba ya tala le ta si ya le o sa do atu ya centra ya se sa stai mi to balai pule sa do
after la fiona te commit after to le German Salo le on tapule pe o sa no la fiona sento ya out o la mo manino le meta un fai o la usili o le canzone o aumar che lo foi fa penal mot o le luce l'autor sul maleva ya mai le wa o tweet ne LBJ en fai un atari mai le sui o LBJ le mamla fa Samoa le ai
Dr. Kayapa?
A concern this morning is about the 239 patients that have been treated at LBJ. Has this treatment has started already, or are you in the process of getting them admitted to the program?
The mic left up, Mbole.
Just say yes or no.
Yeah. Good morning, Senators. Thank you for the opportunity to be invited in the Senate. Honorable, yes, we have started serving the patients from Hope Dialysis Center. They have a total of 41 patients, together with LBJ patients of 202. So we have a total of 243 patients ongoing dialysis in LBJ currently. Thank you.
Are you able to provide treatment for all those patients?
Yes, Senator.
24 hours a day?
Yes, so LBJ has adjusted their shifts. We have increased to 4 shifts from Monday to Saturday.
Well, that's what I would like to hear, that you'll be able to accommodate all the patients that you're having at LBJ right now. Alau facility nga fayaku centrum o le se senga o referral. E ka to ka ko ngule ave la lo referral le fa mai. E ngal pase se ala tongi fa mai ave fa fon alon mai su el mengo foi su el fa mai su el. So o le concern la nga wa ma ke lo foi fa penga fiona senko. Wa proclama le nga provide e lo sunga le centrum male. E provide uma ele e proclama le el Medicaid e accommodations me un fa penga mole. Ala waukat ngunga ele paiore kako moka nge kai auma. Ele fa kuskusangi kupe di soifor kako ngu. Le alava le matching fane kaunga provide kako. Ia o se kupe kaua kele nga mole kako ngu soifor malo lengo da ngu. An me fai nga lewa tonga akula fionga se ko yau. E leile makamaka se awala. Au mai e oele se me fai e yonga avaku le fingalo mauka mfaki ngoile me mole koko inga da kungu. O isi me uma e ngume lua. A o soi fura kungu e kau ngume kasi kako. ile makamaka mai se ka ko lo ko ko inga ku o la ula e concern le ko fa ku na e ka ko ngu le wa ave la lo le refer la fal mai ya nga ave fa fa o mai ya la e le nga fa ki la ko ko kere nga ka ngu a fa e la wa len fa nga so so nga ile e ka ko fa nga malo ya so so ngi mo ka ko ngu alo nga ka ngu ni ka lo fa ngol ke ku ki male yo ka mo el leche fa pela fsile ya muksa ole ko isa usiri mbele pa un mela usunga senso ya le wa sa nga ku le sunga senko ya ku le foi fa fonga ku mo au mai po le ale me nga mia ya nga fa ya ko le se finga lo mo ko le la mo ku fa so ala usiri fa mo le sunga fa ko muksa ole io pile ka ko yo o ka unga fa ile kon ko la ke ke mi ngo ya ile administrative service le la umol fa ka usa ngal ko wa masinga e operate ai le public health filunga le IOP le yof ia wo mai ngai ko ke tia ave a ko lo va nga le IOP le officer po fela o ia o ia ku langal ka ko fal mai le yof
Fasta ia tu mol faslingia la ofionga me so le malo le tae ole e fa malu ro tu langa ole tato fal mai le yof sa fa pe e tolu ono masina sa tama fai ai upgrade le fale mai le ai nei iofu ona o fala velave ia sa tupu i manua i le ngalu ia matulanga o fa wa ia la le fina ngalo le malai valele mal FAA o le tulanga le ia le ia tonu lava le fale mai iofu o le lawel ele tau ona fa anga mole malai valele e tau foi la ona ave esel mla ile le tato farma ile yofu ai tu se isi tu langa ma walunga tu ai le olalo il flat song le ile mla valele o le la fai tu ya anga ya ngalwenga al batanga luenga na ia tau fai tu le tato farma i tu atu ole o farma ile ia nei a le fo fa anga mai tu pe al proclama le ole arpa ina ia ma fai ona fai le tu langa al taimi ne fa amalulu atu ona ele o mafai mtanga luenga ona tu lei mafa va ver fai ngo luenga e alu level mtanga luenga lungo ole requirement ale arpa ia e mese fo ile procurement pese i ol fa tuai la titi la ia ai wa yel fanua wa malie le ainga e o yel fanua ole a tu le fa ma i ofu mo senga ai fa malu watu no tu langa ia pese i ole o se a wivi le tu watu mo le tato fon mai le yof mal falo alo
ya saro la vale sile le jem le we jem kam mai mala mala kikin ka
si da fa popole titi le ta pule le bo Elesia tulu po se portu Pacifica ona mo el manuia le mo e America Samoa i mea tau sofu maloloina e ala le Medicaid a olea e pe i fōliga pai o lo tata loa i whale tonu o le fesidi pe aisi au whale tonu ai lai tele le tupe me tonu le lefia o le prokalamba le a Sandra e fōu al prokalamba le lalo whale mai ua leva se fulu pa le ono tausaka o uiai i le sufai pasui o le off-island referral David, na alu la lea ta ofi po tele ai ta lafu o le referral fal mai. David na ile i maua met prokalamba le fai le central le tele va pesca ko Medicaid. Ia le wo tele Medicaid i lalo le la Affordable Care Act po le Obama Care voile. Le bo be i si Medicaid tupik. Fa popo ia le wa o iwa sfu iwa biliona le Medicaid tau sanga le to pe tatu fa fo ai. Alo fa fo il fast food bido pe aba fast food afo foto fa fo o fasili na o ai la do fa fo ye a le tu pu fa la la ya o me na ta de ta to ba lo a o be ta de ba la bai o lo fia ye proclama le fa central ai sia e togi u malava tele an to togi u be man o bien ma ai sia la tele tupe faunga ale o tapuni ale o taufi ona ele se mati fana tatu sta mai tu pe ata to e tau la ava tu fel mati fa lo ta o fiat program o program le fa bai le ai fai pe ma na ia fo a facilidad na pase se togi ia a lu pa e foi e fa ngala Medicare e togi le pili oi ia ma no foi lo na inga vai le asi se le ai inga i fa ai le foi be fa pe o le alu so se be no foi ba e le tal tolo e ia ta tu ai gai ai o nei manuia o ni manuia e le mo e sisi ya tu la la ia nei fa popo ia la fionga to yo la ko la oi alo
pe ata o fi fa tuanga se fai muli ai a mai se avo no
Ia.
te aulo si atu va muli
le fa popo tai ti le tau fa pula bea tai la
Oh, mafua mai le. The investment ya ko fai mai e. Ya na wa kupu mai fa level. A mai i. Ele fai el vai nga lenga. Ma fo fa fica out. O de sila. Om fai ko. Fa ko opes pokola mai fo fa fica out. Kari ngai kau kari e o kou. O isi policy po a isi mea ka uar ka ngaka. O le iloa lai le iloa aku e mako pe malama mako. O le alka ko me la fai. Wa ele koe ola mai o kou le hope. Well, issues nga kau o leva kari o kou. Pele koe ola o kou, o le ale mea al malo la fai.
fai state plan o la ele
Sandra, ya, koe ola.
fionga oi pone fa valia pone le ka li lo la gai pungi
Faafetai lava, Senator. If I may answer Senator Alo's question. We did meet, and the plan is LBJ, Dr. Gayapa has already shared, has absorbed all of HDC's patients. From the Medicaid perspective, our concern is the patients. They're our customers. So that's one issue, what happens with the patients. So they are already taken care of. They're being treated at LBJ, all 41 patients. Now the second issue is the financial sustainability of Hope House as a private business.
Yeah.
Now Medicaid cannot interfere in that. It is not our job to financially sustain a Medicaid provider. In fact, we have the authority to close down a Medicaid provider if they are not complying with federal laws. So we cannot get involved with that. But the governor has already instructed me. We are working, we spoke with CMS yesterday. We're working on amending the state plan to allow them to be a permanent provider October 2024. So it is up to them to sustain themselves until that time. I hope that helps.
dai pone sa do
Kai. E kuro yo ngor kai ko miki e mga ko. No malo ro ko ira ba ngora pe ngo ya kong yo la si ko faru ro ko ko.
sa do ia lo fionga o pa li pa lu do
Aka malo ro ia. Kai.
ia fa after le o mo ma minute fa popo mai le fionga ele sentoa o le fesili mo so se sia mfainta li mai o to o ngase ia fast food maltas o fea e o mai ai nei tangata no foi Amerika Samoa pon tangata o mai se sia tunu
James
Time will have a no. The majority of the patients, the 41, they live here. They're residents.
and
U.S.
so
nationals.
what majority is that?
So there's only 2 that are transients. They came here. They're going to be leaving in a couple of months. But the majority of them, they live here on the island.
So 39
Nine.
are local residents.
Yes.
So whether there's a Hope Dialysis or not, they are entitled to treatment, and LBJ will have to treat them, right?
That's correct.
So let's not talk about them like they're foreigners.
Exactly.
It's nothing additional to the responsibility of the hospital. If Hope Dialysis was never there, those 39 patients would be in LBJ. True?
Yes.
Yeah. That was the insulting part of that presentation, because these are not different people. They are our people.
Yes.
So the two transients are people from outside that request treatment, correct?
Yes.
Now, if Hope Dialysis did not exist, where could they request treatment when they travel back to American Samoa?
LBJ.
LBJ. So LBJ is on the hook for everything, true?
That's correct.
Well, then let's talk about them as if they're some kind of a strange 41 people phenomenon that just happened to show up. Okay, now, the problems that I raised yesterday was the fact that in the early beginning of Hope Dialysis, while the business was trying to get settled, many of their patients would have to go to the hospital for, what do you call that thing on the arm?
Their access?
That access?
Their access, yes.
And they had a problem with that, right? Because LBJ refused to treat them unless they transferred to LBJ.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
But these patients prefer to be treated at Hope Dialysis.
Yes.
So LBJ was discouraging the patients from going to Hope Dialysis, and they would not give them treatment for these other services unless they transfer, right?
Yes.
And that deprives Hope Dialysis of the ability to keep their own patients. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how many times did that happen that you know of?
More than 10 times.
More than 10 times. And that's what LBJ used to do to discourage patients from going to HDC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
And
LBJ was responsible for the reduction in the numbers of patients that choose Hope Dialysis as their treatment center.
That's correct.
Okay, now, why are they complaining about transferring these patients back to them if this is what they wanted in the first place? Do you know? Your name, ma'am?
I'm Dr. Maria Gayapa, Honorable Senator.
Do you have the answer to that question?
Yes, sir. LBJ does not refuse patients for dialysis.
Well,
That's
they
one.
did. They did. I happened to be there when this thing happened. I'm just
The-
getting the information from them, but I was there present.
Honorable Senator, the refusal of patients that happened. The refused patients that they were claiming are patients who had complications from their side. So, by history, my apologies.
Must be your voice.
Okay. For the complicated cases that happened at that time, were the cases that were refused. There were cases that they had their complications and they were not referred appropriately to LBJ. They just showed up in the emergency room. They were not directly refused by history.
Why? Why? Do you prefer them to die instead of treating them? Is that the deal?
There
Because they go to Hope Dialysis, you prefer to let them not treat it, and if they die, they die? Is that the deal?
We are not refusing the patients entering LBJ whenever they have complications. We were discouraging them doing procedures like vascular access, or even their physicians having access to the facility of LBJ, because we don't want to be liable to their complications. We want LBJ to deal with these sick patients directly and deal with complications of our own. If they have their problems, they have to fix their problems. However, we never refuse a patient to be treated of the complications that they have acquired from Hope Dialysis.
Really? And that was the legal position of the medical center? That is the legal position of the medical center? If they were treated at Hope Dialysis, you wouldn't accept them when they have an emergency because you might be liable for the complication?
Apology, Senator, we do not, let me say it straight, we do not refuse any patient, but we do not encourage procedures being done in Hope Dialysis, especially for vascular access, because they cannot deal with the complications of it.
Well, most of
But
that
if
service
they
was
have-
provided by LBJ, was it not?
Apologies. But if they have complications, we will never refuse a patient that enters the facility.
So I don't understand. You're confusing. You don't accept the liability, you only say no when they receive the service outside, and you won't give them emergency treatment. Which is it?
Honorable Senator, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. This is Dr. Jean Anderson, COO for LBJ. If I can just help clarify, we do not refuse. There is never a no. Our concern is that there have been instances, cases where Hope Dialysis was not equipped to deal with the complications of the patients that they were providing dialysis for.
Well, that's where LBJ comes in with the law
Exactly.
that says everyone, doesn't matter what character they are entitled to
Yeah.
medical attention.
Exactly, and
Is
when
that
those
not the truth, the fact?
exactly, and when those patients come to LBJ with those complications, we encourage them to consider remaining with LBJ for their dialysis treatment. That way, if there are complications on the spot, we can address them immediately. That drive time just from Hope Dialysis to LBJ with the complication could result in something fatal. And that was the reason why we were encouraging those patients, come to LBJ for dialysis. We can take care of your dialysis and any other complications that you may have, and to remain with with LBJ permanently.
There you have your reason for failing. They were taking your patients away from you. Purposely, I might say. Okay, let me
Still
ask
that way
them.
today. They're still not accepting patients. They'll call and they'll tell, patients will call LBJ to come to do treatment. They will not accept them because they tell them that
You
they
guys are
have
lying to
no-
me, aren't you?
You know, I find that difficult to
I
understand
don't
when
appreciate being
when
lied to.
we took the initiative to take in all 41 patients.
Okay,
Which is true.
this is my time. What is the maximum amount we entitled to under the Medicaid program?
In FY 2024, we received a total of $91 million in the Medicaid assistance program.
That's what American Samoa is entitled to
Yes,
use.
yes.
How about fiscal year '23?
Well, that, I think it was around 90 million. Every year we get about a 2 or 3% bump. We just,
So 22 was about 90 million as
Yep.
well.
mhm.
In fiscal year '22, how much were you able to match in fiscal year '22?
Just at that point, Governor Lemanu had increased our budget to 3 million. So it entitles us to draw down, I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote.
What's your match ratio?
It's 67% federal, 33% local, is the percentage. So it draws us about 7-8 million in federal dollars.
So $3 million But what? So it's kind of what, like 1/3 to 2/3? 2/3 federal,
Yes,
1/3
yeah,
local?
just about.
So for $3 million, you would have been able to get about 9?
Just about, yeah.
Did you draw all of it?
Yes.
23? Fiscal year
Same thing,
23?
we overexpended, we overspent.
What do you mean by overspending?
There wasn't enough local match to cover all of the services in FY 2023.
How are you able to overspend federal funds?
No, I'm sorry, I meant the local budget that was given to us. The federal, every year since we've got the increase, we've been returning federal funds back because we cannot use it.
How much local overspending did you have in 23?
I don't want to misquote, we do have that data, but I want to say maybe about 1 million. I think in FY 2023.
I don't recall that being part of the supplemental. So if you've overspent about $1 million in local funds for Medicaid, where did it come from? Because I don't remember that being part of the supplemental that was submitted for fiscal 23.
Yes, if I can provide some background information, Senator.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's not known, but in FY 2023, we also suspended programs around the month of July. And the governor authorized the government to continue the program because we only had a few more months left. I remember the history of the off-island medical referral and why it was terminated back in 2006, 2008. So my number one responsibility is to ensure that we don't go into insolvency, and I suspend the program. That I have to do that to protect the future of our program. So in FY23, we did suspend the program until July, and the governor allowed us to overrun our budget, and I don't know where they got the money from, but we didn't do that this year. I told my staff we can't do it because it's going to get us. Yes. So, but it was only a few months. But in FY 2023, that's what happened. Again, so this year we got to March of 2024, and we had to suspend the program. And this time we stood firm and says, "I'm sorry, we're not going to allow our program to be overrun this year." And that's why everything has stopped, because we're trying to comply with local laws. And even though the governor had wanted to continue the program and had instructed our agencies to find money to, that's been very hard. So all we're doing right now is trying to pay the arrears of the program. But realistically, today we just got our award notice for FY 2025. American Samoa is receiving $93.2 million in Medicaid assistance program. But we also add on to that the CHIP payments and the EAP payments will raise our money to about $100 million when those awards come in.
When you say $3 million, that doesn't account for LBJ's in-service or
Yes.
in-kind match, does it?
Correct, you're right. It does not account.
How about health?
Health is, I have those numbers, Senator, but I can bring you a short report. But yes, it does also. That's just for services that Medicaid uses. That's just for off-island medical, I'm sorry, that's just for off-island medical referral, for vision, and for DMEs that we do, and then also for HDC when we were doing the COVID response. So that money does not go to $3 million, does not go to DOH, and it does not go to LBJ. Those are for services outside of our government agencies. Because both DOH and LBJ are government-owned, they have special payment methodologies.
Understood. And could we request a report of exactly how much of the federal funds were matched? So that combines your cash, service in kind, and all that, and the total amount that did come in from both sources to the Medicaid program. On what criterions are you able to utilize Medicaid funding to refer patients to off-island medical providers?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. The program has very stringent requirements and criteria. Before Medicaid stood up the off-island Medicaid referral program, only LBJ did the referrals, and LBJ alone made the determinations. We've designed the off-island medical referral program so that now it is fair and equitable to everybody. We've sent over 2,000 patients off-island for medical care. The number one design that we put in there, it has to go through 4 approval processes. We cannot initiate the referral process. It has to be initiated by LBJ, step 1. Step 2, Medicaid does the eligibility screening. Step 3, the off-island medical provider must accept and provide a duration and a quote on the cost of care. And number 4, I do the final sign-off to make sure that there is local match available for the coverage of that patient. So there are 4 steps. The other criteria is number 1, off-island referral can only be done for services that are not available on island. And that's a very sticky point. There's a lot of people who want to go do stuff that can be done at LBJ.
All right. On those services you cannot provide here, does Medicaid pay for referral of patients to stateside, United States facilities?
No. The limit that we can refer our patients is to the state of Hawaii, and that's by federal law. That's the same reason why we're able to refer patients to New Zealand and to the state of Hawaii. So, Hawaii. We cannot refer people beyond Hawaii. We can always go back to CMS and develop some kind of justification, but no.
The nearest facility.
It's the nearest facility, exactly.
Okay. Now, I want to take exception to the statement that this program is new, because Medicaid's been with us for many, many, many years. But there was a problem during my administration with the conflict of interest, where the hospital was continuously abusing this. And that was the reason why I separated Medicaid from LBJ. I mean, it was a fight, but we managed to pull it out. And I took Medicaid and made them independent. So the statement that this is a new program is false, because it goes back a long way, but the improvements that were made since they become independent had been very helpful. It's also allowed us to raise the ceiling for us to be able to match. So I just wanted to make that correction on the record so that it doesn't look like that this was something we just came about just recently. All right, so the maximum is already set by formula. The maximum you can tap into is already established by formula. Is that correct?
Yes, it is correct.
Okay. All right, back to Hope Dialysis. Are you treating patients today?
No, we're not.
No. What are you doing with your machines?
We're packing them up, and we're going to be sending them to, we have a buyer off island.
Okay. So the business is done, right? Okay. How many machines did you have?
We have 14 altogether.
We had 14. And how many shifts did you have at Hope Dialysis?
We had 4.
You had 4 shifts. Okay. Wow. That's a terrible loss to the territory and to the people who are entitled to the service. Terrible. Thank you.
Ya balo so do la fio le se to go. Ya le bau ya sa tele sa pa pole ale la do le fio sa tele.
Lau sugal kai komiki. Ya ke le ma ko nge fia 5 city wa le nga la po mai kai awe. Fia mo le fango ya le u fa lo ko di mai le pu ale. Ale la fai pe la ofisi kam fa ye. Ya kolunga ni muke. Lau sunga sa ya ma menor for tour. O le ale kulanga o le ale official business position o le company. Sa
I'm the facility administrator that you hope dialysis?
Yeah, Manhart.
Compliance officer,
O ai le owner kampangi. Wa o le sile mea ngā mai ai o kouia le Hope Dialysis. Po le a kongua le mea wa kapungi ai le kampangi. O le fisiti ngā le fono. O ai la le owner kampangi.
Hope Dialysis has stakeholders. So there's
Investor.
yes.
Ka kai o mai mga o le profiki. The
Yes.
profit. O le winga ngā o kampangi. Ele mawala le profit. Hoki le kungu. Al kampangi le au kou. Ola yo le kungu. Ola ofisili. The Medicare cover 80%.
Yes.
A person, kangaka le mai 20%. A yeling shua kangaka le whangaling shua. Out of 41 patients, if ia mai ia yeling shua, 37, and you still close the place down. 37, I mean only four patients hanging sure, and you still close it down.
The 80% does not cover the total amount of what we need to bring into.
Koe la kulesi ofisili.
Okay.
O ai le pleskengi o kampangi. O le ame o le sa wainga i le fono, penga vaku le request al fono sa.
Dr. Jean Latart is off
Yeah.
island.
Kalwayo lo kenyi, o pupu lo kenyi. Ai ang o le patient mo su kampangi o ko. Kala mo ia na ya.
Moi.
Whawhikai whanmai o le whanmai le kua ia. Open kampangi o ko, a vaku le whaukuanga le whaatonu. E le sustain le operation o ko. O le mefo i le kaunsi sila i kako whango. Lai senge o kampangi ia. Anga o vai ai, le kasi, lua, kolu kampangi, le maula profiki. A o le ola leo la kungu, whawhikai chairman.
E leo tau fia o tol profiki e manao tupe watu whao. E whea le reimbursement. Reimbursement e Medicaid le, Medicare. Le to te whai ai mai. Le reimbursement ke le sau pai tai tas. Whea.
The 80%? Is that what you're asking for Medicare?
Yeah.
We buy supplies. We buy medication. Those things have to be shipped in from off.
How much profit did you make the last 3 years?
I don't have that.
Better le. Yeah, la fio suli ai. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but tele vai paluat foi le tau e ubi tau pe tau. Vai taba le suru le orsai. Yeah, dis foi lo tau fa lo. Alo no fo mai lava. O le natu atu to subai. Ni mtau pe le tai lava ma he ona mtau pe tau tele. Ai fa tele atu le orsai taba yo la suru. Lupu bai a bes foi li tatu mboli mau pa tai su mai wa fa tonu wai nei a tonu wa mo sina al manga ta mai ia tu sai ol tatu ma fa nei aso centro pa lo fa tai mo sa ya tatu ka ya pa sa ya alo paul bele lo tala pa boli taluanta te fai gal wega taule ele ese te li fa luas o refuse LBJ se ba ya langa tatu pui tatu fal ba langa tatu fal ba asa e fa tai tele la sa doia fai wa tatu
Mo le atu whawhtai tele. Whawhtai atu tamai o le tunu e tu sai foi malon sai. Tonu le wa tongi pātau le ave wa pi foi fola. Ai ia manuia tele le nei aso. Fa manuia le atua i tamau le atunu. Tato tua whelo ai foi siaso o iluma. Man whawhtai.
tai le manuia la vai al vengo fega ia tu o ona tatu